Jacqueline Terrebonne, the editor-in-chief of Gallery magazine. I'm so thrilled to be joined here today by two extremely accomplished and esteemed men, Scott Mitchell, the architect, and Ross Fleckner, the artist. We're chatting today because Scott Mitchell has a new fantastic book out, Scott Mitchell Houses with Rizzoli, that's just, hot off the presses at the end of April. And Ross has contributed some of the images for the book as well. So thank you both for joining me today. Let's get started by talking a little bit about how the book got started and the two of you came to collaborate on it.
The book got started because I've been in business 20 years and I finally at age 49 had enough stuff to put in a book. And Ross got involved in this because I totally took advantage of our friendship and called him and begged him to go take some photos of a project in the Hamptons that I did for a mutual friend of ours. And he, as a very good friend, did that and really helped me out with the book.
He's been doing it for a long time, and his work is amazing and it's gotten better. He really worked hard to get there. I've known Scott for how many years?
Probably 24, something like that.
So I met him when he was working, living in the Hamptons. I guess he was assisting or working in the office of an architect.
I lived in the Hamptons in my early 20s, and this is years ago when not very many people lived out there year round. And I had a fabulous internship with this really great architect who had come out of Paul Rudolph's office named Preston Phillips in Bridgehampton. And one of the only other people out there, kids out there in their early 20s, was your assistant, David Ryan. And David Ryan was my entree to you and to Sandy and all of that group. Yeah.
And you mentioned Sandy Gallen. The book is dedicated to him, correct?
Yes. Sandy was a very close friend of both myself and Ross. And we unfortunately lost him 3 years ago last month.
Mm-hmm.
It's been
And
3
so,
years already, huh?
Yeah, 3 years, April 21. And so 8 or 9 weeks after we lost Sandy, I had born my son in Australia, who has 2 moms. And it was one of those universal things where it's like my best friend was taken away, which was heartbreaking. And yet the universe delivered this beautiful gift 8 or 9 weeks later. And it was a really special sort of passing of the torch, I guess. And so I dedicated the book to both Sandy and to Max.
Oh,
Nice.
That's great.
Very nice.
So Ross, what was that like to shoot a house for a book? It's not what we think of you as doing every day.
But I've taken photographs, and I actually enjoy taking photographs. And, I've even done some photography books. But it was interesting because I took pictures of the house as a favor to Scott. The house is near me here in the Hamptons. And it's beautiful. The work he did there is beautiful. Sandy kind of was like a liaison also for Scott, because Sandy professionally, he had been a manager of talent. And through him, I met a lot of people, and so did Scott.
Absolutely.
And when Scott and Sandy became friends, they actually started collaborating because Sandy had always been a kind of secret designer or something. He designed houses. He had a very specific look.
Right.
Kind of like Ralph Lauren-y, but very comfortable. They started collaborating on, I think at first, Sandy's houses, because Sandy built houses, lived in them, and basically until he could sell them and moved on.
Right.
And Scott worked with him, and I guess Scott did the work and Sandy did the bossing around.
Yeah.
And the nagging.
Sandy was like a frustrated decorator.
Yeah.
He was the most successful manager in the history of Hollywood and managed everybody, all kinds of names you'd recognize. But his passionate hobby was decorating, and he would do these houses. He'd have these fabulous dinner parties, and then he'd sell the house. And I never understood. I remember asking him, "How can you let this go? Aren't you attached to it?" And he told me something very interesting. He said, "Scott, the reason I sell these things is because the truth is I have like an addiction to buying beautiful shit. And so if I sell it with everything in it, it just means that I validate my addiction and I can go and start over and go buy a whole nother collection of beautiful things," which that was his
But
passion.
what's also nice is that as much as he would like to buy beautiful things, he obviously knew how to detach from his possessions.
Right.
So he actually was even though he was materialistic and he liked stuff, he liked to move on and he liked movement. And he had that kind of, it's almost like a spiritual side of him, had a detachment from it all too, because it was such a joy just to do the project, so it wasn't the end, it was the process. So he was always involved in a process, whether it was building, furnishing, or selling.
Right.
Scott, let's talk about some of your process then and what distinguishes your homes from the homes of other architects.
Good question. I think I like to say that my work is fundamentally about the emotions and the psychology of the experience. Ross paints a painting, photographers take photographs, and they're a frame that's fixed, and so it's a captured moment. Architecture is this thing that has procession to it. You walk in, you turn around, there's an arrival sequence, you experience it chronologically. And so I think the psychology and the emotions that surround that experience are what really make it. And I always say, a kindergartner should be able to walk out of a piece of architecture and know whether it was good or not, because it's not about some esoteric understanding of architectural criticism. It's about the way it makes you feel. And if you feel safe and warm, then I think you're on the right track.
And if you feel like you've gotten what you wanted, I mean, people who come to architects like Scott usually are pretty they know themselves pretty well and they know how they like things. So I think that Scott is really good at working with people. And I think that's a critical component of an architect's relationship. I mean, first of all, to the environment, how the house or building relates to the environment, and to the person who's commissioning it, because it is on some level a collaboration. Most people, I would imagine, Scott, really want to work with you or your office collaboratively. They don't want, I mean, I know there are some people who just say, I don't want to know anything, send me the bill and give me the key at the end. But,
by the way, I'm still looking for that client.
Right.
Like, here's the check, fill it out, and give me the key at the end.
If you're out there right now, here he is.
Yeah. If anyone out there is watching that could be that person, please call me immediately.
It's a good time to do it too, right? A lot of people have a lot of time on their hands.
Right. I can start immediately.
So anyway, yeah. I mean, I just built a house here, and it's near where Scott built a house. So I know the architects and how to it's fun to work with them. Of course, Scott was a little too busy for me.
Oh.
Ross, I want to know about the painting behind you because it's so gorgeous. Is that new work?
Yes.
It's,
Oh, wow.
ah, I love it.
It's for a show that was supposed to open in May 1st in Berlin, is now rescheduled for September.
And
And
that,
it looks like it's going to happen. In
Yeah.
September.
They're
Good.
picking them up. I mean, I have a lot of paintings here. And they were all supposed to be gone, so my studio is kind of full at the moment.
oh. That abundance of flowers reminds me of the one in the Hamptons that you shot. There's a beautiful photo on the side of a building and just flowers are cascading down it as well.
When Sandy had lived there, I went, I mean, it was kind of bittersweet actually, photographing the house because Sandy wasn't there anymore.
Yeah. I had that experience too the first time I went after we lost him. It was hard to be there.
I mean, the property was beautiful, but Sandy just had a certain kind of way of maintaining things that, you know, I guess the soul for me
Yeah.
has to do with the person who actually occupies space.
Yeah.
Scott gives it the ability to be soulful.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so true, Ross.
Huh?
That's so
I
true.
think that's such an important part of architecture, the difference
Yeah.
between, you know, that kind of corporate, cold. I mean, I like all that industrial look, but really for living, it's different. You know, you want to be warm and you want to be comfortable.
Yeah. And there can be that warmth even if the space is somewhat minimal. It doesn't have to be.
I love minimal. My house is extremely minimal, but it has to do with the finishes and, you know, the transitions between walls and floors and hallways to rooms.
Mhm.
It's really the little details. And Scott is kind of very obsessive about detail.
Mhm.
And I think that's actually one of the things that stands out in his work.
Scott, what are some of
I've seen him busy, you know, kind of ruminating about details. It's like a madman.
what are those details you
neurosis-
ruminate on?
Neurosis and OCD are ugly things. You know,
Not if they're properly employed.
you know, it's a constant negotiation in the architect's mind between the big picture and the little picture, and they both inform each other equally. And so it's this dialogue where you start with the big program items: how many bedrooms, you know, how big is the house going to be, what are we designing it for, whatever the building is. It could be a gas station, and then you got to go to the detail, and that informs the big picture. And it's this constant back and forth until you kind of nut out the guts of it, the soul of it.
Nice.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like that, Ron? Are you ever big picture, little picture? Is that something that you go about thinking in your work?
Absolutely. I mean, you mean literally or metaphorically?
Both.
Big pictures and little pictures. I love them both.
I have to say something, and this is purely coincidental that this subject matter has come up, but I want to say something that's completely relevant here. Ross, I remember this juxtaposition between microcosm and macrocosm. I remember seeing that, and really it made an impact on me as a young guy. And I remember there was a series of paintings you were doing after your dad was sick, and they had to do with cells.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, that's the microscopic level. But then at the same time, you were doing these universal images that were, you know, clusters of stars and galaxies. And I that really made a poetic impact on me. I'll never forget it. The juxtaposition between the tiny and the huge. And in a way, they're sort of linked and the same, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you know, it's just about looking around really, and, you know, consciousness and your eyeballs, and it's about the awe of looking up and the amazement about looking down.
Right. Exactly.
You know, both are amazing, including the things that, you know, they always said if the AIDS virus wasn't so lethal, it would be beautiful.
Mm.
Wow.
That's what I said to my father when he told me he had cancer, and he showed me all the pictures, you know, that they show him. I said, oh, they're beautiful. I'm going to make paintings. He said, that's all you have to say? I said, well, I'm sorry you have cancer. But anyway, you know, it just has to do with how you look at things,
Right.
and how, you know, you really can look at things and see something when you look. And then you kind of, the big picture is when you look up and you can't see anything anymore.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you kind of evaporate into it.
And I'm wondering.
I don't know if architecture has to do with that. You know, you don't want to evaporate your architecture.
I don't know, man. Maybe.
It can envelop you.
Yeah.
More envelop, less evaporate.
That's also metaphorical and literal, right?
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
You know, everybody comes along and they want to change, right? What's in style or in vogue today, and in 100 years, so often, you know, or 20 years, things go out of fashion, come into fashion. People want to change things, and the joke with the contractors and my clients is, if somebody comes along in 100 years and they're like, oh my God, this concrete house is so 2020, let's get it out of here and do something else. They're going to go bankrupt before they demo it, because there's so much concrete underground to support. So it's kind of like laughable.
And what's it like for the two of you when your worlds collide? I know, Scott, you said you don't think about the art that's going on the walls when you create the house, but what's it like when you see one of Ross's paintings later hung by a client? Or
Oh no, they're totally linked together to me.
okay.
In my mind, you know, you don't have a successful project until the gardens and the interiors and the architecture are all in concert singing the same song. And so Ross has actually done on commission some beautiful pieces for special places in homes that I've done in the past years.
Oh, wow.
And those rooms, Ross did this 18-foot long, amazing canvas piece, and the room really was created with that piece in mind. And so I think it's fabulous when everything can kind of gel into one experience.
I also think it's, you know, Scott's probably would agree that an architect would be fortunate to be able to control all the dynamics that go into a house. Like a lot of clients, you know, have their own work, and maybe it's not exactly, well,
Right.
What can you say, right?
Yeah.
People do what they do. It's their house.
Right.
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 Right. But
That's what I always say. If I'm working with an architect, I said, in the end, we're not living together.
And Ross, what do you like your spaces that you live in to be like?
Really empty.
Mm-hmm.
Very simple. I don't like to have any clutter. I don't like to have any, you know, I mean, I hate to say it, but I don't like to have objects or paintings, actually. If it was, you know, kind of everyone did what I did, I'd be out of business. I like blank walls. I really do. Or very simple things on them. You know, sometimes I have a painting up, but it's kind of quiet painting. You know, minimal. I wouldn't put my own work up just because it would give me anxiety.
Yeah.
I would just stare at it and think it could be better, or I could do more.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, I'm here, my studio, my house is, you know, just over here. It's all connected. So I kind of go back and forth. And, you know, when I go home through the doorway, I like to keep it really simple.
Nice. And how about you, Scott? How do you like to live?
Well, I live in a house that I bought 16 years ago that I had nothing to do with. And a lot of the architects I know don't live in their own work for the
So
same
you
reason.
don't want to stare at your own work either.
Yeah, it's literally that thing. Ross, who was the Dutch painter that kept getting arrested for sneaking into the museum to fiddle with the painting because he said it wasn't.
I don't know. That's an interesting one, though.
I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah. It's a lot of architects don't want to live in their own work because you wake up in the morning and you're looking up at the ceiling and you're like, fuck, I would have done that differently. You know, it drives you crazy.
Yeah, it's like when paintings are in my studio, I always say, nothing is ever done really until it leaves here. Because I could have something sitting here for 3 months and I thought it was done. And then one night I walked past it in the corner of my eye. I know how to make it better.
Yeah.
So, you kind of have to wait for those moments sometime.
Yeah.
It's kind of tricky.
Yeah.
But, our architecture is different. I mean, he's actually building a building. What are you working on now, Scott?
Yeah.
we've got 4 international projects and 8 domestic ones. We're doing a modern farm north of Toronto. We're doing a house out in Barbuda in the far eastern Caribbean. We're doing a boutique hotel on an island in Australia called Phillips Island.
Really? That's so nice.
Which is very cool. It's where they have these little penguins. They come out of the water at night, out of the ocean, and they walk up the beach, and that's where they live. And then in the morning, they go back out to sea. It's kind of cool. And then some houses. I'm doing a hospital, a private hospital. First time I'm doing a medical building, so that's fun.
Interesting.
Where is that?
Here in LA. It's a private doctor's hospital, a 5-story building. At this point in my career, I jokingly say, look, I'd love to do a birdhouse or a gas station or something just with a different program because, we've been doing a lot of houses for the last 20 years. And so it's fun to have a different program because it challenges your imagination to think about different things, which is fun.
It must be really interesting. I mean, yeah, it's like an institutional thing that has very specific requirements.
Yeah,
that you also have to design beautifully.
Yeah,
and comfortably.
The hospital thing is particularly interesting because hospitals, I'm sure you guys agree, they're the most heinous, horrible buildings and spaces to go in. If you're not sick before you go in, you're going to feel sick when you get in there in that 3,300 Kelvin light temperature. And yes, the OSHPAD, which is the regulatory agency for medical buildings, has got a million rules. Of course, they have to, look at this COVID thing, bacteria lives on surfaces and they got to be able to clean them. And a lot of that makes perfect sense. But the reality is, I think they can be a lot better. And lighting, we're using this fabulous lighting designer from Orange County who's working with us to do these circadian rhythms with the lighting systems that actually help promote healing. I mean, how much better is that than some light that makes you look green in the hospital? And so we're really excited about pushing the envelope. We've been getting a little bit of pushback from, the conservative folks that are comfortable just sticking with what they've done for 20 or 30 years. But we're trying to push the envelope and trying to make hospitals better, happier places that feel better and make you look better.
Well, we want to look better.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then Scott, it sounds like you have projects everywhere. How does a place fall into the equation for you when you're designing a space, and especially like East Coast versus West Coast, I think is very evident in the book too.
Yeah, for sure. Look, there's a couple of responses to cite. First of all, we're doing a house in Miami right now, and it's humid and you've got hurricanes and wind uplift forces versus a house we just finished in Seattle where there's no hurricanes, but we've got seismic activity and very stringent energy requirements the city of Seattle has. So, you've got your sort of entitlements related specific issues wherever you work. And then of course, the obvious one is, if it's a farm, a rural property in Canada, that's very different from an urban setting. And so you want to kind of be sensitive to the environment and the site where you're working, and try to take advantage of the assets that are there and work with those.
Do you have a favorite project?
I would say probably a house I finished last year at the moment, but it's always changing. It's like the next one is always your favorite, right?
Is the same for you, Ross? Is the
No.
next one always the favorite? Or?
No?
Takes me a while to get to like them sometimes.
Oh, you have to warm up to them.
Yeah. You go through a lot of emotion, but the ones you did a long time ago, it's kind of settled down.
Right.
You could be a little more objective.
And Scott, do you still love them years and years later? Are they aging well for you?
All right. So I had a funny experience recently. You're getting old when somebody bought a farm I did 21 years ago. Ross, this was Sandy's first farm.
Yeah, no, I know.
And Clifford Ross, who and his girlfriend Nikki Donan bought it. Really nice girl from LA. And they invited me to come and help them kind of restore it and get it back to it the way it was, and add a studio for him. And to answer your question, it was a little painful because all I can see are the things that I would do differently. Because 21 years ago, your taste evolves and you wouldn't do it exactly the same way. So I look at all the finished carpentry details and I think, oh, what was I thinking?
That happens to me a lot too. What was I thinking? Trope.
Yeah. So it's been an interesting experience but also fun. It's the people who bought it are really nice people. They're friends of Ross and mine. So
you're working on the studio?
Yeah.
Good. That's nice to hear.
Yeah. Just keeping it very simple and minimal.
Well, your book is a true testament to how beautiful your projects and your work has been, year after year, and they all look fresh and gorgeous. And I'm so happy to join Scott, Ross here today and talk about this tremendous book, and also how art and architecture come together so beautifully. It's inspiring to speak with both of you. So thank you.
Congratulations, Scott.
Thank you for having me.
I haven't seen the book, but I'm really looking forward to it.
It's in the mail. You'll get it next week. And thank you for going over there and letting me sucker you into taking those photographs.
It wasn't that big a deal, really. It's good to get out of the house sometimes.
It was a big deal for me.
I'm like the perfect person for this quarantine. I've been practicing it my whole career.
Nothing's changed.
Not really. I just go to, I'm in my studio and I stay home.
Too funny. Well,
nobody comes over so much now.
Ross, happy birthday. I wish I was there to give you a big COVID safe kiss.
I don't know what you've been seeing. You don't know if it's safe.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks for having us, Jacqueline.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. This is so much fun.